Hey team, a few of you have asked, what can I expect when I get into sales? That is a huge question, and one I'm going to answer on this video. If you don't know me, my name's Luke. I've been in the sales game for over 20 years, everything from door to door to enterprise tech sales and everything in between. I've made all the mistakes. I've learned a ton. I'm still learning now. And the goal of this video, if you're just starting out in sales, is what can you expect? And I'll draw a little bit on my experience and take you through some key steps and learnings that I've made along the way. I started out doing door to door. I've worked in health and safety. I've worked in tech. I've sold SaaS subscriptions. I did 8 years at IBM, where we were looking at cloud. We were looking at managed services. We were working with some of the biggest companies doing $1 million deals. And I've worked for startups. I've worked in that hyper-fast, hyper-focused space, win at all costs arena as well. So from door-to-door sales to the boardroom, sit back and enjoy. I want this one to be a bit more of a conversation. Drop any comments below. And of course, there's a ton of links below. Drop your email, get a lot of free sales assets from me, including a new app that I am beta testing to help you get more reps. So unfortunately for you all out there, you live in the world of Instagram and social media and all that cool stuff that I'm way too old to really understand. So when I first got into sales, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I was traveling in Australia. I needed a job. This door-to-door sales opportunity came up. And to be honest, I was pretty brutal at it. I assumed if I had a list of people, i.e. the leads, that might be interested in some dual fuel offer from Energy Australia, that of course they would want to sign up. And as you can imagine, it wasn't that simple at all. I really enjoyed exploring the different suburbs of Sydney. I was super overweight at the time, and in hindsight, going from mega overweight student who just finished his degree to walking the streets of Sydney 7 days a week in 40-degree heat, I came back quite literally half the man. But on reflection, that was my first taste of a high-pressured, high-turnover type sales organization. Just get the cheap labor in, commission only, razz them up in the morning, hype them up a little bit like Wolf of Wall Street, but on a budget, and then off we went to make our sales. And if we did make any commission, probably spent all that in the evenings on the lash anyway. Fast forward then into a job. I was working in health and safety. I was very much kind of out on sites. But when I pivoted to help a couple of friends start their own company, I suddenly became the sales guy. So that literally meant cold calling. I didn't know what I was doing. Back in my day, we had like physical phones and these things called the yellow pages in the UK, where you would literally sit down and search for the businesses and then you would call them up. And if they didn't answer, if they were local, sometimes you just call in on them and drop off some information. So again, in hindsight, had no clue what I was doing, and I was absolutely terrible. And it wasn't until I joined a business networking group where they had some sort of sales education that I realized that there was a little bit of nuance and a little bit of structure and a little bit of education needed if I was going to actually sell more stuff. And obviously from there, having a framework and a base and a network as well to lean on for a bit of education served me well. This is well before the world of online sales and Discord communities and school communities. This was back in the day where there was a lot more face-to-face networking. And if you wanted to go out and make those connections, you had to do it on purpose. And so my background is very much face-to-face sales, but that over time has definitely translated from door-to-door to telesales to face-to-face sales and now to online sales as well. Done a few different sales roles. Did that quite typically, if you're in the corporate world, you start off as a business development rep, which is qualifying the leads, going to find the leads, qualify them, and then pass them to the account executive, who'd be the sales guy that'd be closing them, and then on to customer success, whose job would be, once you have a customer, to keep selling to them. Tons of different roles there. Obviously learned a lot. It wasn't until I went to IBM and got put on a proper 6-month global sales school, it was called at the time, initiative, that I really kind of got deep into the frameworks and the structures of selling. And I think the benefits of having been in the deep end and done face-to-face sales and telesales, sort of winging it, if you like, back in the UK from then when I moved to Ireland, it was good to kind of see what these corporate entities were training people in and what was good and what might not necessarily work in the real world based off my experience. So I think lesson number one, even in that period of time, was very much just, okay, I fell into it. I didn't know what I was doing. I got to a point where I realized there were actually people out there that did know what they were doing. I could lean on them for help and advice. And then it wasn't until I was in a corporate structure that, again, there was much more structure around the training and development of the business development and the sales teams as well. Since then, I've sold through different channels as well. There's obviously the face-to-face direct selling to clients. There's selling through channel partners and alliances like that. There's many, many different ways to sales. And then in more recent years, the more high-ticket sales offer, working with creators and coaches and different communities to identify leads, get them onto calls, close them, and then onboard them into their communities, which, again, definitely took a little bit of getting used to. It's not the same having a Zoom call with a singular person that's spending their own money on something that could eventually benefit them versus that corporate world of trying to convince a CFO to part with millions of dollars that probably isn't his per se. But over every sales experience that I've had, there's definitely some key things that we can kind of call out as being consistent across them. One is the most important, and that's the money. And it doesn't matter if you're a high-ticket seller working at home on your own, or if you're in a corporate, your sales plan, your commission plan, the quality of the leads, team around you, the offering that you're selling, all these different things are going to affect how easy it is for you to make money, quite simply. And certainly what I do with all of my students now, it's preparing for the sales call and being able to close the prospect on that call. But we have to bear in mind there's a ton of stuff that can potentially happen before the call to warm that prospect up, or conversely, make sure that you actually have a terrible prospect. It's not even fit to sell to on the call. So there's a ton of factors. And I think when you're closing on your own, you can take a bit more responsibility over that. When you're in a corporate structure, you're kind of stuck with the leads that you have. Some years I've made a ton of money. Other years have been terrible. When we think of potentially unlimited upside, there are some things that we need to consider before we jump into those roles for sure. And I think if anybody is getting into sales for the first time, even if you're looking to be an online salesperson or remote closer, that kind of thing, I'm going to say quite controversially, definitely look at trying to get maybe a remote sales role working for a corporate entity. Cut your teeth, get some education, get some reps in that's not on your time. One of the brilliant things about working for someone else is that you learn that business. And you can learn, make all the mistakes, get better on someone else's time, on someone else's dime, still earn a salary, have that safety net before you then move into the online space and working for yourself. And, that's something that I obviously had the luxury of doing because I've worked for so long in the corporate world. So I'd already done that before I moved into the world of online coaching. But I think if you're starting out, if you're young, it's definitely something to think about. On the one hand, you can take lots of risk. On the other hand, speaking as a parent, I definitely want my kids to have a little bit of a safety net there before going out on their own. In this day and age, flexibility and lifestyle is really high up on the hierarchy of needs that a lot of people that want to work remotely have. It's certainly something that I'm really focused on, is having a flexible lifestyle so I'm able to work, earn money, but also spend more time with my family. 3 small kids, they have a ton of activities that they do outside of school, and I don't want to be working in a 9-to-5 job, stuck in traffic and wasting all this time that 95% of the population do globally. I want to own my time and be flexible and, of course, be able to work hard and earn money, but at the same time, enjoy the lifestyle that I lead. For someone like me, that lifestyle is as simple as dropping my kids to school, bringing them to their, football lessons, swimming lessons, whatever it be. For someone much younger, maybe it's that dream Instagram lifestyle where you're closing deals on the beach with your laptop, something like that, driving around your Lamborghini. I live in the Irish countryside. Condition of the roads are not really suited for those kind of sports cars. So I spend all my money on my family. But it's when you're starting out, it's something that you need to think about is, okay, so we've got potentially unlimited upside here when it comes to commissions, but that could mean that we earn fuck all, or could mean we earn a lot. And then on the flexibility of lifestyle, it's that corporate 9-to-5, you've got a structure, you've got a salary versus I can be super flexible with my time. And a lot of companies do offer hybrid and remote roles, though that is actually shrinking and will continue to shrink into 2026 as companies want to bring people back into the office. Same goes for the salespeople. A lot of people need their sales teams back in the office, team culture, and clients want to see people out on site face-to-face a lot more now as well, which is harking back to the old days that I used to work in pre-COVID, but it's something that you need to bear in mind. You might start off thinking you're going to have a remote role, but you may soon have to pivot back to face-to-face. And the third thing I mentioned is sort of consistent thing across all my sales roles is rejection. I think if you're going to go into a sales role, you need to be ready for the rejection. You're going to hear no way more times than you're ever going to hear yes. And you can do all the objection handling training that you want to do. But at the end of the day, if you're not mentally prepared to hear no, either politely or sometimes impolitely, then you need to develop a bit of a thick skin, get ready for that rejection. It's going to happen and it is totally normal. And like everything, the more you experience something, the more it normalizes it. The general perception of salespeople at the moment in the market is quite low, especially in the online space. People have been burned over years of buying shit courses off dodgy crypto people, and all this kind of AI stuff is crazy. So again, you have to think about the reputation of the industry, of the thing you're selling, your reputation as a closer within that industry as well. There's a ton of things you need to think about that's going to affect like long-term your mental health, and couple that with, if you are going to be a remote closer, the loneliness. Like, one thing I really enjoy now with my students is having that community. For quite a long time, I used to enjoy working on my own, building my own thing. But even my wife would say to me, would you get the fuck out of the house from time to time and meet some real people? And to a degree, she was right. Now I even have my own small community of students that I help. At least it gives me that face-to-face time, because certainly when you get to my age, if you're not working, you're with the kids. And so I don't want to be working on my own and then hanging out with like 7-year-olds all the time. That's probably not good for the mental health either. So we've covered quite a few things there, and I hope that's given you a taste as to what life is like in sales. I've given you a brief history of my 20 plus years in sales. We've covered some of the benefits and some of the negative sides of sales, being unlimited commission, also zero commission, the flexibility of work, how that is also changing that landscape. We've also covered a little bit rejection and loneliness. And we'll go into these 4 things in a lot more detail as I progress my content journey. I'm definitely a better salesperson than I am content creator, but I'm doing my best. So just remember, the nuanced truth is somewhere in the middle. You see someone on Instagram driving the Lamborghini, closing deals on the beach in Bali. It's probably not like that all the time. But similarly, when you see salespeople burnt out, rejected, hearing no all the time, there's probably a lot they can be doing to boost their mental health and boost their performance as well. A lot of it centers around education, which, surprise, surprise, I am very passionate about, being a sales coach. So check out the links below. Got a ton of free sales assets coming, a brand new app and beta testing to get your reps in, keep track of how well you're doing each week. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one.